taking some time to join us. I'm super excited about today's Data Sharks live stream. We have with us Ajay Singh from SqlDBM, and he is the product strategy lead there. And if I'm not mistaken, you've been there since the very beginning, right, Ajay?
You're absolutely right, Jared. I've been there from the very beginning, yeah.
That is amazing. When did it start?
Almost 5 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
And before I look over Arcadia and Rich, I just wanted to, there are regular sharks here. So, and then you've got myself with my beautiful radio voice, but not so beautiful face.
Jared, face made for radio. Come on.
Yeah, face made for radio. And why am I doing a live stream with my face, right? But so Ajay, I'm really excited about this because we use SqlDBM all the time, and we have a really broad audience that listens to these videos and either listens to them or watches them. And so, sometimes it's college students and sometimes it's like solution architects. And so what I want to do is really ask you, as a person that's been there from the beginning, has the product strategy. I always like to ask, how would you explain what you do to someone who's like in college? What does the world look like without your product in place? Kind of paint that picture for people so they can kind of get a sense of it, and we'll fill in stuff too.
Sure. Okay. So SqlDBM, what a world look without SqlDBM. So SqlDBM actually helps to resolve a problem where users would want to create, modify, or design a database online. It's a native cloud solution, so they want to design a database without writing a single line of code. This is a very nutshell statement. But if I have to describe, let's assume that you have a very limited knowledge on database modeling. In that case, I would say it helps to bring the picture out of your code. So it scans your DDL and it brings an ERD or a database diagram for you, where you can interactively work with that diagram without getting into the details of any databases and still get your work done with focusing on what you want to do. Mm-hmm. So that's in very simple words.
Right. No, that's perfect. I mean, and one of the things that we've really enjoyed working with, those types of diagrams is that we can actually explain it to business users. It's in a form that they can understand versus just having straight up code. They're just not gonna get the vision of it. And what's one of the sessions that we'll often do when we're doing strategy sessions and building these models is we'll do. Sometimes we call it the stump the chump session, where we'll put the model up on the projector, and then we'll try to ask questions that the model can't resolve. Right? What are some questions that we can't answer with this model? And sometimes that's half the battle of just getting the business to insert, like, hey, we actually need this information and this information. So to be able to design that in real time and engage in that is super valuable. So everybody loves a startup story, and I've always been actually quite curious about the SqlDBM startup story, because if you actually try and go look like who's at the very beginning and stuff, I'm super interested in SqlDBMs, and I'd love to hear what it was like. I mean, was it in a garage somewhere? Was it funded out of the gate? Like what are some of the give us some of the details there.
Sure. So it started, like I said, 5 years ago. But my personal background, I have over 20 years of experience in software industry, worked in many different verticals, but I was mainly around the database work. So I worked with many different databases. I worked as a data architect, as a data engineer, but all around data. And I have used almost every major tool out there for data modeling. And so there were a lot of pain points in me and my other co-founding, my team members, a lot of pain points, like there is so much missing out there in the market, and how the way we are moving in this data world where you need to have all these features, and it is it is becoming a big data giant where we need all these great modeling solutions. So that was our initially core of thinking, like, hey, we need something. And
what was some of the early feature sets? What were some of those early sets where you're like, we got to have this?
Yeah, so the early feature set was that we gotta have a cloud solution, a cloud native solution, because nobody wanted a thick clients. Nobody wanted to work and carry their computers all across or work now the teams are working remotely. Especially now, everybody
Yeah.
Especially now, yeah.
in this crazy world. But even though in a lot of big companies there are remote teams, and so they need to be independent to work from anywhere you want. So the goal was to have a cloud solution. So that was the initial thing that really sparked us, that we need to have a cloud solution. And now any cloud SaaS solution is very standard in the market. You got to have a cloud SaaS solution out there. So that was a really initial core, which sparked us to move in that direction.
And what was it? Was it funded at the very beginning, or was it kind of like a skunkworks project that you were working while you were doing consulting on the side? What was that very early stage?
It was a letter. It was a skunk work. So it was like, get together. We have this pain point. We've been in this industry. We got to contribute. We got to give back to community. So we started this project. And when it was quite a challenging product because it's cloud, and it has to keep all the complexities of the database, but still keep it super simple to use. Like you said, you have a very wide audience. So similarly, SqlDBM has a very wide audience. It could be a student, it could be a single contributor, it could be a very small startup company, but all the way to the billion-dollar companies out there who are using SqlDBM. So very wide audience. So we we rolled our beta version to test the waters out there. And to our surprise, it was a better hit than 1996 Windows desktop version. It was a huge hit. We were like very thrilled with that, because it's not easy to try something with your database when it is a new solution out there. It's a very close to every data architect heart. Their database is very close to them. So they tried our solution and we got massive feedback. So that triggered us, that told us that we have something super important that needs to be worked on. And that feedback gave us the right, automatically it gave us the direction we had to move on from there.
Did you start with a very specific client set, or was it more like a public release type scenario?
That's a very good question, because initially when we launched the product, we were more on a B2C kind of product. So we were targeting individual contributors or consultants or students. But later on, very soon, we realized it is needed in a collaborative fashion with all the teams. So we automatically switched from B2C to B2B, and that's where we are. Yeah.
B2C, that's interesting. So as you launched, you were thinking it was going to be just more straight to individuals,
consumers.
Individuals.
Interesting.
Yeah.
How long did that transition take from going from B2C to B2B? Was it just like, okay, this is now our target market?
It turned on very early. When we released beta, it was for a single user, but soon we got so much feedback that we need to work collaborative environment. So we introduced this collaborative environment, and that told us it has to be B2B. And then we also realized over our journey, it is not only needed by the modelers or database designers, it is actually needed by anybody who needs to access the data.
Yeah.
So we are targeting not only the data modelers or data designers, but we are targeting maybe you have a QA engineers, maybe you have data scientists, data governance. So all those different teams who needs to access the data, they need to visualize this, how it looks like, so that they can do their task in a more productive fashion. So today, SqlDBM is more like a communication hub in all the data practices. Like you said, like you work with your business users, and this becomes an interactive discussion point for you.
Right.
So yeah.
How did you get that initial group, that the smaller group of B2C? Because I have a tremendous amount of interest in this, because it really matters to be able to get, like, it's cool if you can get a product out, but it really matters to like go from 0 to 1. Like that moment of being able to take a product to somebody that will actually move their body to download or subscribe to something
and pay,
and pay. Yeah, I mean, those
And
are
pay.
0 to 1 is such a critical thing. I'm so curious, like, how did you
Jump
acquire
over
that little audience? Yeah.
Peter
Yeah.
Thiel wrote a whole book about this, Jared.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
I think what we realized is that you're right. Going from 0 to 1 to actually get an audience to try something is the biggest roadblock, biggest hoop. So how we worked around it was, even today, if you go to SqlDBM not knowing anything about SqlDBM, you go to SqlDBM.com, there's a big blue button says try modeling.
Yeah.
You click on that and you're right into your modeling area. There's no steps. There is no asks, no questions, no signups, no email addresses, no credit cards. So you can taste it right in a single second. As compared to any other solutions where you have to download or do big registrations or contact and all that. So
how did you get the feedback from them? Because you weren't capturing it, right? So I'm just curious, like, how did you realize who they were, that it wasn't maybe just purely B2C, but there was a B2B aspect to it? Was it just later they signed up, or?
We have opened a lot of channels for our users to communicate to us. And we have a support channel where they open ideas, where they talk, they discuss among themselves. There's a little community there. And also they talk to us directly from there. They leave tickets. We have online chats available and other support channels. So there are multiple ways they approach to us. So
the barrier to adoption was just, like literally no barrier. They could just go straight in, start using it. In a lot of ways, I think about the way Snowflake started. It's very similar in terms of, I mean, nobody had ever heard of a database that you could go and just instantly sign up for and have provisioned instantly for you. It was just kind of it had happened, but it was very clunky the way it worked in other places. So I like the idea of just having it be an easy entry and not having so many barriers. So the very first like dollars, were those spent by actual B2B, or were they spent by B2C?
To our surprise, there was a mix. There was a huge mix because even the B2C, there are some experts or single consultants, even the people who are working in their silos. They need to get their job done, so they were B2C. But there were many B2Bs also. But the question is, from 0 to 1, there are two steps. You talk like how is the adoption happened and how somebody started paying dollars to you. So with our beta version out there, it was absolutely free to use as much as you want to do, because we wanted to test the waters to understand. And then we told our initial users that we're gonna launch a paid version because we need to sustain a company here. And we gave them a pretty big, you can say, discounts or early bird users. So there was a huge, because they built the trust with us by then. We were and we are still listening very closely to our customers, and we move the ship around because our customers are driving the ship. They are telling us what's needed in the market, even though we have in-house experts, but we rely a lot on our customer base to tell us where to move. So we kind of respect them a lot back, and they have this nice trust. So if it provides a right solution which resolves their problems, then I don't think dollars is a problem.
So today, in today's platform, and I want to, I don't want to escape the history stuff because I love it, but in today's platform, what is this thing that sort of teeters the person from, hey, I'm doing this for free, to I want a paid account? Is it saving it, or is there some kind of a mechanism that maybe it's the team use? I don't know. I'm just curious what the mechanism is.
The mechanism is so far it's still a lot of organic growth going on for us. A lot of word of mouth traveling out there, and the mechanism is generally users sign up for free version. They try it. Of course, there are some limitations, but of course there are initial couple of weeks of free usage of quite a lot of things, and then they realize this is the solution which can help them resolve the problem. And actually paying, becoming a subscriber of SqlDBM will or actually resolve them a lot more dollars by using the right tooling. So
when you first got started, I'm curious about this. Was it a sort of a small group of team members, or did it start like with like one person with the idea, and then it grew from there?
It was a small group of team members. So
okay.
It was a very small group of team members from where we started, and slowly we grew, and we are very hand-picked people here. We are a very lean but very effective team out here. So,
yeah, definitely. Yeah, one of the things I always like to ask people, and this is kind of a moving target because companies change so much during their life cycle, but what are some moments from 5 years ago to now where you really knew this thing was taking off? Like, what are some of the big things that happen where it's like, wow, this is going somewhere?
Well, like I said, the initial thing was when we launched and the wide acceptance by the market, and audiences talking to us and telling us how to navigate what they need. So that was already something indicating that we have something special which is needed by the market. The next very thing, like I said, we moved into this collaboration fashion where we allowed different teams to work together. So providing this, it not only supports, but I would say it promotes team interactivity.
Right.
Right. So that really helped to bring the gap between the business and the technical users. So that was,
No, I was just curious how that duration, because that's not it's just a small feature to roll out, right? When you got multiple parties engaged, right? That's a pretty involved feature to release. How long did that take to release once you realized that was going to be a need?
If I remember correctly, it took us like 4 to 5 months.
Yeah.
Because we dedicated one part of our development team towards this communication. So that took us that much time, but we knew that this is absolutely needed thing. Yeah. And then one more thing I want to tell you. So when we initially released the SQL Server version, which was a pretty big hit, but then we very early on we realized we were cloud native solution. So of course we embrace all the cloud data warehousing, all the cloud data warehouses, and we started supporting Snowflake from very early on. I think that was also a very critical moment for us to move in that right direction. And that was so much appreciated by a lot of our customers because there is not much tooling around with such a beautiful product out there. And that support kicked us a lot, and it's still moving. And that's one of our big priorities, to support Snowflake with all the nice features that they are coming out. For example, object tagging or data cataloging. So we try to stay up to date with Snowflake.
Yeah, I remember when
that's a big thing for us, because for Intricity, that was our first entry point. So when first features of Snowflake capabilities came about is when we made the decision. We have the on-prem, the desktop solutions for doing the data modeling, and we're moving away and adopting organization-wide SqlDBM.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think about Snowflake's early customers. We've been on this train for a long time, and I look at their early customers, and they were, in the early years, largely startups. It was companies that were like, we have nothing on-prem. We have nothing on-prem. So find me a solution, and Snowflake was that solution at the time.
Yeah.
Did you see that as well, where in the early years it was mostly all startups, or was it did it kind of immediately go? Because 5 years ago, Snowflake had quite a bit of momentum at that point. Was it sort of immediate into large corporations, or did you see it was mostly startups to start?
It was mostly startups. and slowly we moved into the big billion-dollar companies, all the big companies. And it also comes with the trust and reputation. So because with the big companies, there are a lot of processes, there are a lot of compliances to work around. So we had to gain all this reputation and trust in the market, which we built over the time, and with all the compliances and all the stuff. So that's how we slowly moved into that industry, and that's where we are today.
Did that have a big impact on the product roadmap and whatnot? Once you started getting big enterprises joining in, it was like, you know, because I noticed this with Snowflake. As soon as large enterprises came, it was just like this flood of new requirements. And you can see when you look at the Snowflake roadmap, you just see all of these little insertion points where they're just adding, you know, not necessarily totally new features, but more like support for a lot of other scenarios.
Right. So our journey was also very similar. So because, you know, somebody has to test the water first. Some big company has to test the water and prove it that this works. This is what we want. So that similar thing happened to us as to Snowflake. When all the big companies started flowing to Snowflake, they needed the right tooling, and we were the early ons supporting Snowflake, and also we were breaking this. We were challenging the traditional status quo of database modeling. So that kind of was very in line with the Snowflake strategy of cloud. So cloud and easy data warehousing, and that's how we also saw the same flow towards us.
Sure. Yeah. And so we got the feature of having it in the cloud, then the feature of Teams. From Teams to today, you know, are there some features that you've been really excited about along the way and leading to today? What are some of the things that you've been really excited about that have released that have been a big deal for you guys?
Currently I'm super excited because we got a lot of feedback to support almost everything that comes towards metadata management. So like I said, we initially were only data modeling. Then we become a communication hub because everybody wanted to interact with the solution, whether they're business or technical users from different backgrounds. And then cloud data warehouse support, Snowflake was a big thing. And now because users do not want to hop over different solutions for their data modeling, for their data metadata management, I would say. So we are also moving in the direction of data governance. So we are trying to incorporate data cataloging, business glossaries, and also Snowflake features like object tagging. And so Snowflake is going to be our priority from all the features. And then every company has their own tech tool stack where their ETL pipeline or data pipeline moves. And it's very important for every tool to if they want to exist in the ecosystem, they need to have these plugins or APIs to work with other tools, which help in the whole chain. So we are also moving towards these APIs and plugins where they can easily work with other tools around and get it streamlined.
Yeah, one of the changes, Jared, that took place not that long ago, I think it was June timeframe, is integration with source control systems like GitHub and GitLab and so on. So that was a big important step, and so support of materialized views came earlier in the year. So again, those features are critically important because exactly as you've said, you know, the ability to integrate into your stack is important. It's not a standalone product.
To have it part of the CI/CD process. Yeah, go ahead, Rich.
I was just going to say, and from the Snowflake perspective, some of the things that are very, very specific to Snowflake, like being able to see retention time for tables, your clustering keys, all of those things that are very specific to Snowflake. It's wonderful to be able to have access to those. And to be able to see that and manage that and build with that in SqlDBM. So,
right. It feels so great, Rich and Arkady. You are so well versed with SqlDBM. You know, it's really close to my heart when some experts like you are staying on top of the solution. That builds a lot of confidence in us.
AJ, we've gone through and looked at many tools. So we've used, early in our careers, Irwin probably ruled the day, and then some other tools came about. The thing about SqlDBM is it disappears from your. We're not working to feed SqlDBM. We're focusing on the data modeling, and I think the speed of the interface, the fact that it's a clean interface, it just allows us to do modeling instead of focusing on how do I use this tool, and that usability, that UX, is a big important fact, because again, you have an idea of how you want to model the data, and SqlDBM does not get in the way.
Go ahead, Rich, and then I have another question about the
I was
UX.
going to say, in addition to that, too, with the value add, like you talk about, I can go in here and I can model and I can, work with the database that I'm going to have in Snowflake, and we've got all the Snowflake specific things that we need in there. But then I can also, it makes it very easy for me to track revisions and do documentation and all of these things. So it's like you say, Arkady, I don't have to export this out and then go and transform the data and then load it somewhere else to be able to generate a document that I can share, or look at the revisions and say, well, what happened from here to here? Or, and like AJ, you talked about, the communication hub, being able to say, hey, look, I think we want to make this change. I want to tag somebody with a message, share that out with them, and have that communication there. I don't have to pull it out, take a screenshot, put it in Slack, then send it to it's all right there. And so there's a lot of that makes a big difference. So,
yeah.
And I think it's easy to discount the amount of friction that exists when it isn't like that, right? When you don't have the ability to have sort of this centralized communication hub for defining what information is, it just creates just a lot of barriers for people to get involved. So to have those gone is such a big deal in defining what information is for our organization. One of the things that, and we've asked several folks that have joined us on Data Sharks this question. How did the UX is a debate that Arkady and I have a lot, and it's not necessarily a debate. It's a conversation that we're constantly having, which is, do you start with UX, and sort of top down with UX, or did you start bottom up, like with your requirements, defining what those requirements are from the maybe the metadata or what have you, and then you design the UX? Like how did you sort of come in saying, I know what it needs to look like? Or did you say, I know what my back-end requirements are?
We start mainly with what is the problem that we need to resolve, and then we work on the UX first, because UX is the first area where user needs to interact, feel, and use it. If we keep it complicated, or if it is still in the code language, then what's the point of having SqlDBM? Because the goal is to keep focused on your business requirements. So UX is a very critical piece for us. Once the UX is satisfied to us that this is the right UX, we want to move forward, then all the complexities is ours, not users. Then we take on from there, from our engineering team, our dev team, how to resolve that issue around this UX. Because our client is UX. They stop at the UX. So we want our client to be most high priority there to resolve the issue.
And do you just have like a UX guru there, or are you using your community to kind of test ideas? Like what's the methods you guys typically use?
We have not UX guru, but we have UX gurus, I would say.
Many.
And we have other experts, technical experts who define the problem properly. And also we sometimes work with our favorite customers and try to show them this is what we are thinking, and give your early feedback so that we roll out with the right version when we step out of the door. So
yeah, one of the things that I mentioned to your team internally in preparation for this call, I said to them, SqlDBM is the secret giant of the Snowflake revolution, and they kind of laughed. And I said, but it really is true how large that community is. Are there, first of all, are there numbers out there of how many users there are? You don't have to share it if you're not comfortable sharing that, but I'm curious how big it is.
I'm okay to share because it's also on the website.
Okay.
So it's I believe it's more than 180,000 users for SqlDBM.
I mean, that is enormous. That is an enormous user base.
Yeah.
So speaking to that, how have you been able to maintain your teams so tight? You know, it's a fairly small team for such a large user community.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what is it something purposeful in terms of making sure that you keep the quality really high within that team?
Mm-hmm.
You know, speak to that a little bit. How you've sustained your teams and grown
Mm-hmm.
where you've seen necessary.
Yes, it's purposeful because we want very high talent, only very hand-picked talent.
Mm-hmm.
We have a very rigorous process of hiring.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we have our team and we have our core members who individually interview the person because we want to make sure the person that is hired is fully capable to work with the team. And also we have this, I love working for SqlDBM, not just because we have a great tool, but great users, but it's such a great environment that we have built up here. It's a very innovative environment, very friendly environment.
Mm-hmm.
So that keeps us together. That keeps us lean. It doesn't matter we have 180,000 or 1 million users because it's a technology power also. If we have put great, strong minds together and use the right technology out there, it really does not matter how wide audience you have.
Yeah, and so so if somebody wanted to find SqlDBM, what's the best way to do it? Is it just to go straight to the website and go click that button and start, or are you finding that because the typical software approach is, we're going to have some sales reps, they're going to sell to an enterprise account. Are you starting to do that, or is it still sort of on demand led?
It's still on demand led. We do not have sales representatives who go out, but we have a lot of word of mouth traveling. A lot of our partnership with SqlDBM, we are available on the Partner Connect page. So we get Snowflake clients right from there. Many times Snowflake sales engineers, they want their proper adoption of the tool, and SqlDBM helps their clients to adopt Snowflake faster. So there is definitely mutual interest there. And a lot of times it's very surprising to me when clients come to us and they say, hey, we want to use, and we ask, where did you hear? And they said, oh, we somebody joined our team and he used SqlDBM in his previous company and they loved it so much. I'm like, wow, this is really nice.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty amazing the size of that community, and I would say, personal opinion, I think that is the best way to go to market. If you have the capacity to do an on-demand generated market, you're in a admirable position. Let me just put it that way. Not have to have sales reps doing cold calling into accounts. That's exactly how to set up a market.
And that was an attractive thing when we were looking at SqlDBM. It's the ability to go to a website and the pricing is there. It's transparent. You see what the difference in features are. You're able to try it. You're able to exercise with it. But I think the other big thing of what keeps it sticky, why people stay with a product, is the ability to see new features and new capabilities continuously being added to it, and also being transparent. So you're showing these are things coming, these are things we've delivered. I think those things are also critically important for us.
That builds a lot of reputation. That builds a lot of trust with our customers.
Now, having said that, there are enterprises coming in and adopting this. And so one of the questions I'd have is, in that process of adoption, we've, in a lot of what we've talked about, it's sort of generating new content and whatnot. But what if an organization has like a ton of content already? They have, a bunch of databases already. How much, sort of plug and play is there if in an established enterprise?
That's the real beauty of SqlDBM. Even you have complicated databases, tons of data out there, but you don't have control. And that's where somebody comes, joins the team, and say, "Hey, you need to have the right tooling. Try SqlDBM." And they go, click reverse engineer, and voila, they have this beautiful picture which tells them everything they are lacking, what are the areas of improvement. So it's so quick that they can uncover those issues very quickly. So it doesn't really matter whether they have a complicated big database behind or they are starting from scratch. The usability on the tool, the visualization is very instant. Yeah.
And between, well, Rich, were you going to say something?
I was just going to say, when the first time I logged into SqlDBM, it's been a number of years ago, but I was up and running and getting some work done like right away. It was, like I said, it was so easy to get in, and then to Katie's point, with all the time when I'm logging in there, I'll get a little pop up each time. Says, "Hey, look what's new," and I'll click next and next and I'm just kind of taking mental notes, and then sometimes I'll click next, and then I'll be like, cool.
Oh, this is good.
Oh yeah, I gotta dive into the details of that and take a look at it, and so it's I really enjoy the way that works and how that is.
So Ajay, where do you think this is all going? Like, what if you were to look at the industry as a whole? Where do you think this world of modeling, presenting information, that world that you live in, where do you see it all moving towards?
I think I personally think that every step, every word we are saying is converting into data. Even right now, what we are talking is going as a data. It's going to bits, right? Everything we see around in our world, we live in such a modern data world that everything is transforming into the data. And the companies, the industry has become really smart on collecting all this data. They are collecting from all different sources, whether it is Siri is listening, or Alexa is listening, or YouTube, or Google Analytics, or all those different streams of data that we are collecting all this data. Now the challenge is how to orchestrate this data so that we can take some meaningful actions out of all this collected data. And that is where industry is moving, and it's improving on that area. And a lot of companies want to be fully 100% data driven, and they are in the process of aligning their ducks in a single line. So that's where, to obtain all this meaning out of this gigantic data is super important. And the best way to do is to better architect your data. Only then you can take the meaningful information out of that. I really hope, or I have a dream that we have all this data and we could use it just like Siri or Alexa, where I ask any question and they respond me back. So for that, the proper orchestrating of this data is super important, and having the right tools which can put the data in the proper structure and obtain that is super needed. And I guess that's where it creates a sweet spot for SqlDBM as well as its own area to shine. And that's where we are going. The industry is moving towards.
Yeah, part of that success cycle. So we've got a pipeline, if you will, or a process that manages this data pipeline. And SqlDBM plays both in the beginning, in the middle, and in the end, because you've got an evolution. This model continues to evolve. It continues to change. And certainly those, and there are multiple parties, multiple players, multiple personas, if you will, that have to interact with the data models. And it's nice that there's an interface. You've got a summary interface that shows the subject areas for somebody who just cares top level, what do we have in this model? And then somebody who wants to see the details of how the data is structured. The data types are there as well, including the DDL.
Right. And Katie, I agree with you that SqlDBM or any similar tool is needed on all different stages, whether you are on your source database, whether you are in your intermediate level where you are transforming the data, or your final target data source. We are all visual people. So it's important to have this visual understanding from your source and transformation and your final target source. And there are many different backgrounds of users. Not, like I said, not data engineers need to look at ERD, but everybody needs to look at them. So it really helps to resolve the issues.
I think back, I think it was like right around 2015 to 2017, where there was so much noise about big data, and there was sort of this collective belief that data could somehow magically become information, like that you really, you didn't have to do any work, that you could just like put it all in one place and it would just sort of magically reveal itself as information. I remember Jim Cramer from CNBC like getting so excited about big data, and I'm watching him going, "This is on Mad Money. I mean, like what what am I seeing here?" You know, like there's an old saying that my economics professor told me. He said, "When your grocer starts talking about his stock portfolio, it's time to sell." You know, so I we were seeing that in real time back in those years. We had a booth at I think it was at Informatica World. This is several years back, and right next to us was Cloudera, and they've changed over time. But at that time, nobody was there. It was just an empty booth, and we were right next to them, and very active. And it got me thinking, what's going on here? There's so much noise, but in practice, nothing's happening. And what we later came to realize is that the traversing the chasm of having this raw data to something that could actually be interpreted as information by business users was a big deal. And it wasn't going to go away with the magic wand. Like, it was a big deal. It had to happen. And I think there's still remnants of that belief system out in the marketplace, that somehow data is just going to magically emerge as information. And the truth is it doesn't, and that there's work involved in turning it into information, and to have your tooling is a mechanism for sort of visualizing that aspiration. So
I totally agree, Jared. Yeah.
So Ajay, again, I'm going to give you a moment to let the audience know how to find SqlDBM, the best path forward to adopting it. I want to be sure that those that are interested, they know where to go get it.
Sure. So the easiest way to find SqlDBM is go to SqlDBM.com, and you will go to the homepage, and it's very simple to sign up and start using right off the bat. There are other ways. You can Google SqlDBM or SEO works. Or you can try it for yourself and try it and see if it resolves the problem that you have. It can help you to visualize or streamline your data practices in your companies or in your work areas. And that's where you can find us.
Awesome.
Super
awesome.
simple.
And you'll, if you want to follow Ajay on LinkedIn, he's out there as well, and they have a great team over there. Super exciting team, and I'm really excited to see where you guys take it. So excellent work, by the way.
Love it. Yep.
All right, thank you, Ajay, for joining Data Sharks. We've had a great time speaking with you today, and we'll sign out.
Sure. Thank you, guys.
Thanks everyone for joining. Take care.
Thanks, everyone. Have an excellent day.
We'll see you.